Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a deep dive into all this material that you sent us about finding purpose and navigating life's journey.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot here,
Yeah.
focused on Jungian psychology and the work of Dr. James Hollis.
Right.
So it seems like you're ready for some serious self-reflection.
Yeah, it is exciting to unpack this with you. One thing that I think immediately stands out to me is how much of this material revolves around the idea of self.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important to define these terms early on.
Yeah, you're right. I think that'd be helpful for our listener as well.
Yeah.
So when we talk about self,
Yeah.
what exactly do we mean?
Well, there are two key concepts here. The capital S self
Okay,
and the sense of self.
got it.
Think of the self, as Jung described it, as this incredible driving force within us.
Yeah.
It's always pushing us toward wholeness and healing, like a sunflower always turning towards the light.
It's a beautiful image.
Yeah.
So the self is like this innate wisdom, this inner compass,
Yeah.
guiding us towards our truest potential.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with our sense of self.
Okay.
This is our everyday understanding of who we are, which is constantly evolving and, importantly, is shaped by our experiences, especially early on in life.
It's like the self is the blueprint, and our sense of self is the structure we build based on that blueprint.
Right.
But sometimes we deviate from the plan or misinterpret the instructions along the way.
That's a great way to put it. And sometimes we end up building a structure that doesn't quite reflect the true potential of the blueprint because we're too focused on external pressures or expectations.
Right.
Dr. Hollis talks a lot about this in his conversation with Andrew Huberman.
He does. And that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
It's so easy to get caught up in what others think we should be doing or who we should be.
Oh, totally.
And we lose touch with that inner wisdom. Have you ever experienced that in your own life?
Absolutely. I think everyone struggles with this to some extent. For me, it was realizing that I had built a career based on what I thought would impress others,
Oh, wow.
rather than what truly lit me up inside.
It's so brave to admit that, and I think it's a common experience.
Yeah.
But how do we start to recognize when our sense of self is out of alignment with our true self?
Right.
It can be difficult to disentangle those threads.
It can be. One of the most powerful tools Dr. Hollis offers is the idea of looking for recurring patterns in our lives.
Okay.
He suggests setting aside even just 15 minutes each day for quiet reflection.
So just taking some time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can journal, meditate,
Mm.
or simply sit in stillness and observe your thoughts and feelings.
So it's about creating space for that inner wisdom to emerge.
Exactly. It's like tuning into a radio station.
Okay.
You have to quiet the static to hear the music.
Yeah.
And in the quiet, you might start to notice patterns, especially those that are self-defeating or keep leading to the same negative outcomes.
That's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. Those patterns could be clues that we're operating from our sense of self rather than our true self.
Precisely. And sometimes those patterns are echoes of what Dr. Hollis calls the unlived life of the parent.
Wow. Okay.
He's suggesting that we often inherit our parents' unexamined anxieties
Oh, wow.
or unfulfilled desires without even realizing it.
Whoa, that's a powerful concept. It's like
Yeah.
we're carrying around these invisible scripts from our childhood that are shaping our choices and behaviors in the present.
It is powerful, and it can be a bit unsettling to think about,
Right.
I imagine, for our listener as well.
Yeah.
But recognizing these inherited patterns is actually the first step to breaking free from them.
Okay, so once we've identified these patterns, how do we start to rewrite the script?
Well, Dr. Hollis believes that dreams offer incredible insights into our unconscious.
Okay.
He emphasizes that dreams are not random,
Yeah.
but a language of the psyche.
Okay.
He actually said that we average 6 dreams a night.
Wow.
Our psyche is working hard while we sleep, trying to communicate with us.
That's amazing. So we're receiving all these messages every night,
Hmm.
but we often just forget them or dismiss them as nonsense.
Right. And those dreams can offer valuable clues about the unlived life of our parents, as well as other unconscious complexes that might be driving our behavior.
So how can we tap into the wisdom of our dreams? Do we need to become expert dream interpreters?
You don't need to be an expert, but Dr. Hollis does suggest keeping a dream journal.
Okay,
Jot down whatever you remember as soon as you wake up, even if it doesn't make sense.
just get it down.
Yeah.
I
Over time, you might start to notice recurring symbols or themes.
And those symbols and themes could point us back to those unconscious patterns we were talking about.
Exactly. It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Okay.
You're looking for connections, for hints about what your psyche is trying to tell you.
It makes me wonder what my dreams are trying to tell me. I'm definitely going to start paying more attention to them.
I encourage you to. It's fascinating work, and it all
Okay.
ties back to the importance of meaning. Dr. Hollis really emphasized this throughout the materials he sent us. He said that if we're living in alignment with our soul's purpose, even if things are difficult,
Yeah.
the psyche will support us.
That's a really empowering thought.
Yeah.
So even when things are tough, if we feel a sense of meaning in what we're doing,
Yeah.
it becomes easier to navigate those challenges.
Right. And conversely, if we're not living authentically,
Yeah.
or if we haven't found meaning in what we're doing, we might experience what Dr. Hollis called psychopathology,
Oh, wow.
which literally means the suffering of the soul.
That's heavy.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how many people are walking around with this sense of emptiness or unease,
Right.
and it's because they haven't tapped into what truly matters to them.
It's a common struggle, especially in our fast-paced, often superficial culture.
Yeah.
We're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should be doing or achieving,
Yeah.
and it can be hard to hear our own inner voice amidst all the noise.
And that's where the courage comes in. The courage to confront our shadows, to challenge those inherited patterns,
Yeah.
and to create a life that truly aligns with our soul's purpose.
Absolutely. And that's where things start to get really interesting.
Okay.
Speaking of shadows, do you want to delve into what that actually means in the Jungian sense?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think our listeners are probably curious about that too. Okay, so we're talking about the shadow.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit ominous,
Right.
but I feel like it's not as scary as it sounds.
Yeah.
What exactly did Dr. Hollis mean by the shadow self?
You're right. It's not about something spooky lurking within us. Think of it as the parts of ourselves
Okay.
that we tend to reject or deny, the qualities we deem unacceptable or undesirable.
Okay.
Things like jealousy, envy,
Yeah.
anger,
Mhm.
maybe even greed.
So it's the stuff we try to hide, both from
Uh-huh.
ourselves and from the world. I guess it's called the shadow for a reason.
Exactly. And here's the thing. Denying those aspects doesn't make them disappear. They just go underground, so to speak,
Okay.
and can actually cause more harm when they're not acknowledged.
It's like trying to ignore a leaky faucet.
Yes.
You can pretend it's not there, but eventually it's going to cause some serious damage if you don't address it.
That's such a great analogy. And when we don't consciously engage with our shadow,
Mm-hmm.
it often comes out in unhealthy ways.
Okay.
We might project it onto others, meaning we see those negative qualities in them instead of ourselves.
Oh, I've totally done that. Like
Yeah.
when I'm annoyed with someone for being overly competitive,
Right?
maybe it's because I'm struggling with my own competitive feelings that I haven't fully dealt with.
That's a perfect example. And Dr. Hollis warns about the dangers of this, especially in the digital age.
Oh, interesting.
He sees social media as a breeding ground for shadow projection,
Oh, okay.
with individuals and groups attacking and denigrating those who hold different views.
It's like we're all shouting our shadow selves into this digital void,
Right.
and it just amplifies the negativity.
Precisely. It creates a climate of fear and polarization,
Yeah.
preventing us from engaging in genuine dialogue and actually confronting those shadow aspects within ourselves.
So if we want to move towards a more compassionate and understanding world,
Mm-hmm.
both internally and externally,
Yeah,
we need to start by acknowledging our own shadows.
absolutely. And this requires a lot of courage, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Dr. Hollis shared a powerful anecdote about facing his own fears
Okay.
during his training in a psychiatric hospital.
Oh, wow.
He was terrified, but by confronting those fears head on,
Yeah.
he was able to better understand himself and connect with his patients on a deeper level.
Wow, that's such a powerful example. It makes me think about all the ways I might be avoiding my own fears,
Right.
especially the ones lurking in my shadow.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for how we can start to face those fears in a healthy way?
Well, Dr. Hollis emphasizes that running away from our fears only makes them more powerful.
Okay.
He encourages us to approach them with curiosity and compassion, recognizing that they're often rooted in past experiences or
Right.
limiting beliefs that we've internalized.
Okay.
He would likely suggest to our listener
Yeah.
that they consider those recurring patterns, especially any related to fear,
Mhm.
and ask themselves what those patterns are trying to tell them.
That's a good point. It's
Yeah.
not about trying to eradicate those shadow aspects altogether,
Right.
but about understanding them
Yeah.
and integrating them into a more whole and authentic sense of self.
Exactly. And this leads us to another crucial aspect of Dr. Hollis's work, the exploration of gendered experiences.
Okay.
He talks about how men and women are socialized very differently, which has a profound impact on how we view ourselves and our purpose in the world.
This is so important. It's like
Yeah.
we're given these invisible scripts based on our gender,
Right.
and they can be really limiting, especially for men.
Yeah.
who are often encouraged to suppress their emotions and focus solely on achievement.
Yeah.
Dr. Hollis actually asked his audience to imagine a world where men have no close female friends,
Right.
no connection to intuition,
Yeah.
and their value is tied solely to productivity.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is.
It illuminates the emotional starvation that can result from adhering to these rigid gender roles.
Right.
And while women have made strides in breaking free from traditional expectations,
Yeah.
we still face unique challenges.
Absolutely. Dr. Hollis acknowledges that women are often expected to juggle multiple roles,
Yeah.
caregiver,
Yeah.
career woman,
Right.
emotional anchor for the family, and it can be overwhelming.
He encourages women to cultivate their inner masculine,
Oh, interesting.
to help them set boundaries and pursue their goals,
Okay.
while reminding men of the power and importance of developing their inner feminine, embracing empathy, intuition, and emotional depth.
It seems like finding this balance between the masculine and feminine is essential for everyone,
Yeah.
regardless of gender,
Yeah.
to truly thrive and create fulfilling relationships.
I completely agree. It's about recognizing and valuing both energies within ourselves
Yeah.
and creating a space for both to express themselves in a healthy and balanced way.
Speaking of relationships, this seems like a good time to talk about how all this self-work impacts the way we relate to others.
Right.
Dr. Hollis has a really insightful perspective on this, doesn't he?
He does. He emphasizes that our partners are not there to complete us or fix our problems, but rather to challenge us and help us grow.
It's like that saying, iron sharpens iron.
Yes.
We need those other perspectives to help us see ourselves more clearly,
Right.
even if it's not always comfortable.
Yeah.
But he also cautioned against constantly sacrificing for the other person,
Yes, he did.
especially without reciprocity, warning it can lead to resentment.
He did. He made a really important distinction
Okay.
between sacrificing for the other person
Yeah.
versus sacrificing for the relationship or shared project or vision.
Huh.
The latter, he argues, can be incredibly bonding and meaningful.
Yeah.
It's about working together towards something greater than yourselves.
This makes me think about how important it is to choose partners who are also committed to their own personal growth.
Right.
If both individuals are constantly evolving and challenging themselves,
Yeah.
the relationship can become this dynamic space for mutual support and transformation.
I love that way of putting it.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy, of course.
Right.
Dr. Hollis acknowledges that relationships require constant communication, self-awareness,
Right.
and a willingness to evolve alongside your partner.
Yeah.
It's like a dance, a
Yeah.
constant negotiation between individual needs and shared aspirations.
But it's a dance that can be incredibly rewarding, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, especially when both partners are committed to showing up authentically and supporting each other's growth.
It's interesting to consider how all of this applies to our modern world,
Yeah.
especially with the challenges we face in the digital age.
Right.
Dr. Hollis is pretty critical of the internet's impact on our psyches, right?
He is. He
No.
sees the constant stimulation and information overload of the internet
Yeah.
as hindering our ability for deep self-reflection.
Right.
He worries we're becoming more reactive and less capable of genuine dialogue and empathy.
It's like we're losing the ability to sit with discomfort,
Yeah.
to be present with our own thoughts and feelings without immediately seeking distraction or external validation.
And the irony is that we often seek that validation in echo chambers online,
Right.
surrounding ourselves with people who agree with us,
Yeah.
which further prevents us from encountering alternative perspectives
Yeah.
and challenging our own biases.
It's a vicious cycle. So how do we break free from that cycle
Yeah.
and reclaim our capacity for deep thought and meaningful connection?
Well, I think Dr. Hollis would encourage us to become more intentional about how we engage with the technology.
Okay.
Maybe that means setting limits on social media use or creating dedicated time for quiet reflection and connection with loved ones.
Okay.
He'd likely suggest our listener take a close look at their daily habits.
Mm-hmm.
Ask themselves, are my daily choices and interactions enlarging me psycho-spiritually
Yeah.
or diminishing me?
That's a great question for everyone to ask themselves. What are we feeding our minds and souls
Yeah.
with both online and offline? Are we choosing experiences that nourish us or deplete us?
And this brings us to perhaps the most challenging, yet also the most liberating topic of all, our own mortality.
Whoa, that took a turn. But you're right. It's something we all have to face eventually.
Yeah.
And Dr. Hollis certainly doesn't shy away from it.
Yep.
In fact, he sees it as the very thing that makes life meaningful. It can be a tough thing to grapple with this idea that our time is limited. I know I often try to avoid thinking about it,
Right.
but Dr. Hollis suggests that facing our mortality can actually be a source of liberation and inspiration.
Yeah.
How so?
He makes a fascinating point that by acknowledging our finite time here on Earth, we give our choices more weight.
Okay.
It becomes clearer what truly matters, what kind of legacy we want to leave behind.
Yeah.
He often asks, what if this is the only life you get?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a powerful question to sit with.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about how often I get caught up in the day-to-day and lose sight of the bigger picture.
He talks about how under stress, we tend to shrink our time horizons, fixating on immediate worries
Yeah.
rather than our long-term aspirations.
Right.
But consciously expanding that horizon, remembering our mortality,
Okay.
can help us reconnect with those aspirations and make choices that are more aligned with our values.
It's like suddenly being reminded that this isn't a dress rehearsal.
Right.
We're on the main stage and the
Yeah.
clock is ticking.
Exactly. And that realization can be both motivating and a bit frightening.
Right.
Dr. Hollis acknowledges that the ego, that part of us that craves control and permanence, really resists this idea.
Mm-hmm.
But he believes that true serenity, what he calls Gelassenheit,
Okay.
comes from letting go of that illusion of control.
So it's about accepting that we can't control everything.
Right.
Even the fact that we're going to die someday.
Yeah.
And finding peace in that surrender.
It's a profound shift in perspective,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. But
Right.
Dr. Hollis believes it's the key to living a life of greater meaning and purpose,
Okay.
even in the face of uncertainty and loss.
Mm-hmm.
He sees it as a homecoming,
Okay.
a remembering of our true self that is not bound by time or circumstance.
You know, as you're talking about this, I'm remembering that Steve Jobs quote, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." It seems like Dr. Hollis is echoing that sentiment.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that our time here is precious,
Yeah.
and that we have the power to choose how we want to spend it.
Right.
And it all circles back to this theme of recollecting the self, as we were saying earlier. It's not about withdrawing from the world,
Okay.
but rather becoming more grounded and self-aware so that we can show up more fully and authentically in all areas of our lives.
And that process of self-discovery, that journey of uncovering our purpose and embracing our wholeness, takes courage. As we've seen throughout this deep dive, Dr. Hollis doesn't sugarcoat the challenges, does he?
He doesn't. He's very honest about the fact that this work can be uncomfortable, even painful at times.
Yeah.
But he also emphasizes that it's incredibly rewarding,
Okay.
that it leads to a deeper sense of fulfillment and aliveness than we could ever find by chasing external validation or material success.
And it's not a journey we have to take alone, right?
Right.
He talks about the importance of relationships,
He does.
of mentors,
Ooh.
of community.
He does. We need those mirrors, those challenges, those
Yeah.
supportive connections to help us navigate the complexities of life.
Yeah.
And we can also find guidance and inspiration from those who have walked this path before us.
Which brings me to a question I've been pondering as we've been talking. You know how Dr. Hollis emphasizes the importance of asking big questions, of living those questions until we find our own answers? What are the big questions that are calling to you, our listener, right now?
That's a wonderful way to frame it. It's not about having all the answers,
Yeah.
but about having the courage to ask the questions that are stirring in your soul.
Right.
Don't be afraid to challenge your assumptions, to explore new perspectives, to embrace the unknown.
Exactly. And remember what Dr. Hollis said. Does this path enlarge me psychospiritually, or does it diminish me?
Yeah.
Choose the path that leads to expansion, to growth, to a deeper connection with yourself and the world around you.
And trust that in doing so, you're not just honoring your own unique journey,
Yeah.
but also contributing to the collective evolution of humanity.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. I know I'm feeling both inspired and a bit overwhelmed by all the insights we've uncovered.
It's a lot to take in, for sure.
Yeah.
And this is really just the beginning.
Right. We've offered some frameworks and tools for self-reflection.
Yeah.
But the real work happens in the quiet moments when you sit with these ideas and explore what they mean for you.
So what's one thing you would encourage our listener to do as a next step on this journey?
Choose one practice that resonates with you from all that we've discussed today.
Okay.
Whether it's journaling,
Yeah.
dream work, or simply setting aside time for quiet contemplation.
Right.
And commit to it, even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
It's about taking those small steps, those consistent actions
Yeah.
that ultimately lead to lasting transformation.
Absolutely.
And remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Be gentle with yourself, be curious, and trust the process.
That's beautiful advice.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure diving deep into this material with you today.
Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.